have Judy Woodruff speaking to Yamiche Alcindor. And then there are other people from time to time, and I will read a name for them as we go along. So Judy says, after years of failed attempts, Congress is again struggling to make any headway on immigration reform. President Biden's massive immigration bill has failed to gain the support it needs to pass as is. In the meantime, families are caught in limbo. Yamiche Alcindor has this report from Prince George's County, Maryland. Yamiche says, 15 years ago, Jocelyn came to the United States a nervous little girl. She left her home in El Salvador just after her 7th birthday. With her aunt, she made it to the United States and across the border, joining her parents, Cornelia and Dennis, who had crossed a few years earlier. Jocelyn says, I never knew that I didn't have papers, as they say. Yamiche says, years later, though, Jocelyn found out she and her parents had entered the country illegally. What's it been like to be in this country without having legal status? Cornelia says, going to work, to the store and back, you don't know if you're going to return to the children. It's a fear that us parents have every day. Yamiche continues. The family now lives just outside Washington, D.C. in Prince George's County, Maryland. It is home to some 75,000 immigrants without legal status, among the highest in the state. Jocelyn's mother cleans houses for a living, and her father works as a mechanic. Without legal status, they can't get Social Security numbers or health insurance. They're not able to travel back and forth to their home country without the fear of being deported. Jocelyn says, our grandparents are over there, and they pass away, you can't visit. Yamiche says, like many, the family was hopeful when President Joe Biden introduced a sweeping immigration reform bill. Dennis says, he is someone who is very supportive of all undocumented people, and it is clear he has a good heart. Yamiche says, after years of Jocelyn and her family living in the shadows, the Obama administration created the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, known as DACA. It was designed for people brought to the United States illegally as minors. Jocelyn was granted protection under the program. Jocelyn said, it changed my life because I was able to get my driver's license. I was able to graduate last May with a bachelor in health services. Yamiche continues. Now, like many immigrants, Jocelyn is a frontline worker. She is a COVID-19 contact tracer working with the area's Latino population, which has been disproportionately hit by the pandemic. Your parents remain without legal status. What worries you most about that, having this mixed status in your own family? Jocelyn says, my dad, he works at night. Every night I wait for him and I'm like, yay, he's here. I hear his car, and that's a relief because I can go to sleep thinking like we spend another day together. Yamiche says, all across America, in neighborhoods like this one, millions and millions of immigrants have been waiting for Washington to give them a chance at legal status, but it remains unclear when and if real change may actually come. Biden's plan included a pathway to citizenship for the estimated 11 million immigrants without full legal status in the U.S., like Jocelyn, her parents, and her Aunt Juana, who was granted temporary protected status after a 2001 earthquake in El Salvador. But Biden's proposal has run into opposition in Congress. Senator Mitch McConnell calls it a massive proposal for blanket amnesty. Yamiche says, Republicans overwhelmingly oppose Biden's immigration bill, especially amid an uptick in migrant children coming to the U.S. southern border. Democrats have already broken up the legislation in an attempt to ensure more popular pieces pass, like a path to citizenship for Jocelyn, who came to the U.S. as a child, but not for her parents. In the meantime, Jocelyn's parents are still at risk of deportation. If that happens, she would be left to care for her 3 younger siblings, all of whom were born in the U.S. and are citizens. Jocelyn says, I don't know what I would do if she was over there and I was here. I just can't imagine that, but thank God that she's here with me. They're both here with me. Yamiche says, The fear of being sent back to their home countries consumes this family and many others living in limbo, like Nelson, an asylum seeker who fled a civil war in Cameroon. Nelson says he was shot after government soldiers opened fire on a protest, leaving these scars. He requested we not show his face for his safety. Nelson says, "My mom is paralyzed due to what happened. The military came to our family compound, got her well beaten because they couldn't find me, and then burned our entire compound." Yamiche continues, like thousands of other African immigrants, he made his way to Ecuador, then trekked north to the U.S. border. Nelson now lives in Prince George's County. He works as a caregiver at a group home and pays income taxes. Are you worried that you could be sent back? Nelson answers, somebody like me, who are being hunted by the military, let me die here than go to pass through such torture before being killed. Yamiche continues, as for Jocelyn's family, they also pay income taxes, but not all immigrants without legal status do. Biden's plan would require immigrants to pay taxes and pass background checks before they're able to apply for citizenship. Advocates argue that would only boost U.S. tax revenues. Maryland state lawmaker Kathy Scavliga, a Republican, agrees that immigration reform is needed, but she says giving a pathway to citizenship for some 11 million people is not the answer. State Representative Zaliga, offering rewards to people who have come here illegally and putting them ahead of others who are waiting decades on a list to come to our country is not justice. And our schools are suffering right now with virtual learning. And adding additional challenges to that, I don't think that's fair for Maryland citizens and people who are here legally and waiting their turn to immigrate. Sorry, eye roll time. Yamiche continues. As the debate in Congress continues, uncertainty hangs over these families. What will it mean to you if Congress passes a law that allows you to become a citizen, but leaves out your parents? Jocelyn, that still leaves me in the same limbo because I'm in constant fear. I'm going to keep fighting for them. I have hope that things can change. Yamiche says, even under a president who supports that change, it's unclear if and when they will ever be able to lead more normal lives. Yep, can't argue with any of that. So let's remind ourselves here, what is Biden trying to do? Well, from the Pew Research Center, we have something entitled Key Facts about U.S. Immigration Policies and Biden's Proposed Changes. So this will give us a sense of kind of where we are right now and where Biden is trying to take us, if not how we get there. I don't know how we get there. We hope we get there, but anyway. So the Biden administration is acting on a number of fronts to reverse Trump-era restrictions on immigration to the United States. The steps include plans to boost refugee admissions, preserving deportation relief for unauthorized immigrants who came to the U.S. as children, and not enforcing the public charge rule that denies green cards to immigrants who might use public benefits like Medicaid. President Joe Biden has also lifted restrictions established early in the coronavirus pandemic that drastically reduced the number of visas issued to immigrants. The number of people who received a green card declined from about 236,000 in the second quarter of the 2020 fiscal year, January to March, to under 78,000 in the third quarter, April to June. By comparison, in the third quarter of fiscal 2019, nearly 266,000 people received a green card. Biden's biggest immigration proposal to date would allow more new immigrants into the U.S. while giving millions of unauthorized immigrants who are already in the country a pathway to legal status. The expansive legislation would create an 8-year path to citizenship for the nation's estimated 10.5 million unauthorized immigrants, update the existing family-based immigration system, revise employment-based visa rules, and increase the number of diversity visas. By contrast, the Trump administration sought to restrict legal immigration in a variety of ways, including through legislation that would have overhauled the nation's legal immigration system by sharply reducing family-based immigration. Overall, more than 35 million lawful immigrants live in the U.S. Most are American citizens. Many live and work in the country after being granted lawful permanent residence, while others receive temporary visas available to students and workers. In addition, roughly 1 million unauthorized immigrants have temporary permission to live and work in the U.S. through the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals and Temporary Protected Status Program. Here are key details about existing U.S. immigration programs, as well as Biden's proposed changes to them. Family-based immigration. In fiscal 2019, nearly 710,000 people received lawful permanent residence in the U.S. through family sponsorship. The program allows someone to receive a green card if they already have a spouse, child, sibling, or parent living in the country with U.S. citizenship, or, in some cases, a green card. Immigrants from countries with large numbers of applicants often wait for years to receive a green card because a single country can account for no more than 7% of all green cards issued annually. Biden's proposal would expand access to family-based green cards in a variety of ways, such as by increasing per-country caps and clearing application backlogs. Today, family-based immigration, referred to by some as chain migration, is the most common way people gain green cards, in recent years accounting for 2/3 of more than 1 million people who receive green cards annually. Refugee admission. The Biden administration has said it will increase the number of refugees admitted to the country. The new proposed admission caps would be 62,500 refugees for the current 2021 fiscal year and 125,000 for the 2022 fiscal year, which starts in October. The U.S. admitted only about 12,000 refugees in fiscal 2020, reflecting a suspension of admissions during the coronavirus outbreak. This was down from nearly 54,000 in fiscal 2017 and far below the nearly 85,000 admitted in fiscal 2016, the last full fiscal year of the Obama administration. The recent decline in refugee admissions reflects lower admission caps imposed by the Trump administration. The administration capped refugee admissions in the fiscal 2020 at 18,000, the lowest total since Congress created the modern refugee program in 1980 for those fleeing persecution in their home countries. Employment-based green cards. In fiscal 2019, the U.S. government awarded more than 139,000 employment-based green cards to foreign workers and their families. The Biden administration's proposed legislation could boost the number of employment-based green cards, which are capped at about 140,000 per year. The proposal would allow the use of unused visa slots from previous years and allow spouses and children of employment-based visa holders to receive green cards without counting them against the annual cap. These measures could help clear the large backlog of applicants. The proposed legislation also would eliminate the per-country cap that prevents immigrants from any single country to account for more than 7% of green cards issued each year. Next, we have diversity visas. Each year, about 50,000 people receive green cards through the U.S. Diversity Visa Program, also known as the Visa Lottery. Since the program began in 1995, more than 1 million immigrants have received green cards through the lottery, which seeks to diversify the U.S. immigrant population by granting visas to underrepresented nations. Citizens of countries with the most legal immigrants arrivals in recent years, such as Mexico, Canada, China, and India, are not eligible to apply. The Biden administration has proposed legislation to increase the annual total to 80,000 diversity visas. President Donald Trump has sought to eliminate the program altogether. H-1B visas. In fiscal 2019, more than 188,000 high-skilled foreign workers received H-1B visas. H-1B visas accounted for 22% of all temporary visas for employment issued in 2019. This trailed only the H-2A visa for agricultural workers, which accounted for nearly a quarter, 24%, of temporary visas. In all, nearly 2 million H-1B visas were issued from fiscal years 2007 to 2019. The Biden administration is expected to review policies that led to increased denial rates of H-1B visa applications under the Trump administration. In addition, Biden has delayed implementing a rule put in place by Trump that sought to prioritize the H-1B visa selection process based on wages, which would have raised the wages of H-1B recipients overall. Biden also proposed legislation to provide permanent work permits to spouses of H-1B visa holders. By contrast, the Trump administration has sought to restrict these permits. The Trump administration also created an electronic registration system that led to a record number of applicants for fiscal 2021. Excuse me. Temporary permissions. A relatively small number of unauthorized immigrants who come to the U.S. under unusual circumstances have received temporary legal permission to stay in the country. One key distinction for this group of immigrants is that, despite having received permission to live in the U.S., most don't have a path to gain lawful permanent residence. The following two programs are examples of this. Deferred action for childhood arrivals. About 636,000 unauthorized immigrants had temporary work permits and protection from deportation through the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, as of December 31st, 2020. One of Biden's first actions as president was to direct the federal government to take steps to preserve the program, which Trump had tried to end before the Supreme Court allowed it to remain in place. DACA recipients, sometimes called Dreamers, would be among the undocumented immigrants to have a path to U.S. citizenship under Biden's immigration bill. Senators have also proposed separate legislation that would do the same. And temporary protected status. The Biden administration has made immigrants from Venezuela and Burma, or Myanmar, newly eligible for temporary protected status, or TPS, a program that gives immigrants from select countries time-limited permission to live and work in the United States. Overall, it is estimated that more than 600,000 immigrants from 12 countries, potentially including more than 300,000 Venezuelans, currently have or are eligible to have reprieve from deportation under TPS, which covers those who fled designated nations because of war, hurricanes, earthquakes, or other extraordinary conditions that could make it dangerous for them to live there. The estimated total is based on those currently registered and those estimated to be eligible from Burma and Venezuela. TPS benefits must be periodically renewed by the Department of Homeland Security or they expire. The benefits for most groups were extended by the Trump administration into September and October 2021. The deadline for Syrians was extended by the Biden administration to September 30th, 2022. Benefits for those from Venezuela and Burma expire in September 2022. Biden has asked Congress to pass legislation that would allow TPS recipients who meet certain conditions to apply immediately for green cards that let them become lawful permanent residents. TPS currently does not make people automatically eligible for permanent residence or U.S. citizenship. The Trump administration has sought to end TPS for nearly all beneficiaries, but was blocked from doing so by a series of lawsuits. Well, moving on. This article is entitled, Republicans Don't Want Kamala Harris to Succeed on Immigration. That's Why She Must. The migration crisis at America's southern border has put the Biden administration in a sticky wicket. Okay, editorial aside, we just read something that explained that we don't have a migration crisis, but it's an ongoing situation that has been this way for a long time and goes up and down, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so this is just, the standard, not a headline, but, basically it's a standard media trope where they just say, hey, we're all agreeing that there's a crisis. It's a shorthand for there are problems there. And they have to make it sound severe because then they have a story. Anyway, on Wednesday, President Joe Biden tapped his second in command, Vice President Kamala Harris, to head the effort to curb the migration of families and unaccompanied children fleeing from Mexico and Central America for the lifeline just across America's border. Biden told reporters, I can't think of nobody who is better qualified to do this. Oh, I can think of nobody. Sorry, he speaks better than I do. I can think of nobody who is better qualified to do this. Okay. Sorry, Biden. Biden officials say Harris will have two goals: working to slow the flow of irregular migrants by addressing the root causes that prompt them to leave their home countries, as well as strengthening relationships with Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, where most of the migrants come from. Harris will need to play the role of diplomat and tackle issues from poverty to international development, to border security and enforcement. There's no question that this is a challenging situation, Harris acknowledged. While we are clear that people should not come to the border now, we also understand that we will enforce the law, Harris declared at a White House meeting. We also, because we can chew gum and walk at the same time, must address the root causes that cause people to make the trek. The good news: Biden is trusting Harris with this weighty assignment. The bad news: Biden is trusting Harris with this weighty assignment. It demonstrates a well-placed confidence in Harris, who made history when she became the first woman, African American, and Asian American elected to the vice presidency. The former California Attorney General and U.S. Senator has the chops for the job. But immigration is fraught and dangerous territory for this young administration. The Democrats spent years excoriating former President Donald Trump for mishandling the border crisis and for his administration's hostility to immigrant rights. Now it's Biden's turn. Vice presidents eager to prove their mettle are often rewarded with the thorniest tasks. Last year, when Trump assigned then Vice President Mike Pence to honcho the White House coronavirus task force, my first thought was, well, there goes that political career. Trump spent the rest of his presidency in COVID-19 denial, ensuring the federal response to the pandemic would be botched. How could Trump's ever-loyal vice president fix a problem his boss refused to own? President Barack Obama once assigned a vice president by the name of Joe Biden to work on the border issue by engaging our neighbors to the south. Biden visited Central America several times and tried to work with officials to stem the burgeoning tide of migrants heading our way. Given that thousands of children and families have continued to flood our borders, Biden clearly failed. But Harris's biggest hurdle won't be headquartered in Central America. It's right here at home, where legions of Republican elected officials and activists are champing at the bit. They aim to demolish all Biden administration initiatives, and especially one that seeks a humane policy for handling desperate migrants who seek harbor. They are already slamming Harris, labeling her record as soft on immigration enforcement and as Arizonator kind of rushing to get a bunch of words together. Arizona governor, not Arizonator. I kind of like Arizonator. Doug Ducey argues that Harris is unfit. She's about the worst possible choice that one could make, the Republican governor told reporters Wednesday. At no point in her career has she given any indication that she considers the border a problem or a serious threat. They don't want Harris to succeed, and that's why she must. Okay, that was kind of a useless article. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. I should have vetted that one more stringently before I read it. I mean, it was okay. It makes a basic point, but it didn't really advance our knowledge on any issue. We know that the Republicans are generally hoping that that Biden will fail. For example, there's a Reuters article that I was going to read. I've run out of time, but it's entitled "Republicans Ask U.S. Supreme Court to Let Them Defend the Trump Immigration Rule." So they want to set up their own sort of separate government here to defend Trump administration rule. They want to defend rules passed by the previous administration against the wishes of the present administration. So they're just trying to undercut the current administration. It's just ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, I mean, if our country has a problem, it is the increased partisanship that has led to this kind of nonsense where the whole point is to delegitimize and to make that party fail at everything they try to do so that your party can, people will switch your way on the next election and say, well, these guys don't know what they're doing. Let's try these guys out. I mean, obviously it's based in part on a very short attention span of the American voter who doesn't seem to remember that just a few years ago, this party, messed up here or did that there, or, showed that it didn't really have a good plan. So just waiting a few years and then going back to them is not really a solution. I don't know if there's a way to change that and continue to keep the two-party system. It's tricky. I'm just not sure that we can do it. And I'm not sure that there's a will to change it at any point and move to something more parliamentary. And when you look at like a country like, say, Israel, you realize just how screwed up that can be, that kind of system can be, with all sorts of just like niche parties just holding on to fiercely. So like imagine the U.S. with Republicans way over here and Democrats way over there, sniping at each other, and then just add like 5 or 10 or 15 more little groups also doing that same thing, and also being necessary for any group to form a government. I don't know. It's yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I don't have a solution or even a good philosophical take on the whole thing. It's a big problem, and it does not serve us as citizens, as people who live here. I don't like to employ the C word because there are a lot of people that live here who are not citizens, who are invested in this country and who have an investment in how things go here, who are affected by how things go here, who ought to have a voice in deciding how things are going here. But it affects all of us who live here, and it is not serving us well. It is serving the parties. That's who it serves. It serves the leaders of the parties and the people who kind of become the foot soldiers of those parties. Those are served by the partisan warfare. The rest of us are hurt and damaged by it. Anyway, I've got to go. I don't know why I'm continuing with this. The show needs to end. I thank you for joining us again this week, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.